This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 114 of the Dressage Radio Show, brought to you by Equestrian Collections, Horseshows.com, and Kentucky Performance Products.
I'm Donna Barton Brothers. Normally you would see me on NBC or on TVG covering horse racing or the Rolex 3-day event or World Equestrian Games, but I actually have hijacked Chris Stafford's show, and I'm here to take over the radio show right now. And first of all, let me introduce Chris. Everybody always gets introduced by Chris, but nobody ever gets to hear Chris's byline. So let's talk about Chris for a little bit. Let me start by saying happy birthday to you, Chris. You've got a big one coming up this year. I'll leave it to you. Do you want to talk about what we have coming up in July? Or?
Yeah, that's okay, Donna. I mean, this is a strange feeling, being on the other side of the microphone, being interviewed. And thank you very much, I think, for doing this. Yeah, there's a big birthday coming up. It's the big 6-0 on the 25th of July. So I guess it's a kind of a milestone, isn't it? Yeah, and especially when you look back at your accomplishments. I think a lot of people don't realize, most people know you're from England, but they don't realize that, you've done this your whole entire life. I mean, so you were born in Hull, Northamptonshire, England, to parents who had no interest in the horses. Your father was a trainer, but he was a dog trainer. He trained gun dogs for pheasant shooting and was all about the country field sports. Your mother was talented, not professional, but a talented pianist and singer. So you're one of 4 children and the first horsewoman in the family. You started riding seriously at age 4. Do you feel like this was just part of your makeup of who you were? Because obviously you didn't have any influences around you with the horses. Not really, and I came to about horses in a strange way. I was terrified of them when I was about 3 or 4. My brother had a pony for therapeutic reasons, and I was terrified. And my parents would try and encourage me to go out and be supportive to him, but I wouldn't go anywhere near the pony. I was terrified.
So what finally got you out there?
Well, it was just one day. I think they'd given up saying, why don't you go out and stroke the pony when he was brought round on the lead rein, And I went out the house. I went up to the pony and I said to my father, I want to get on. And I think everybody was so dumbstruck that, after all this time, months, years, that I had not wanted to get anywhere near a horse, that they decided, this maybe was the turning point. And
maybe because you didn't have any pressure. You had the opportunity, but no pressure.
That's right.
Yeah. So then you grew up in Northamptonshire riding, and you did participated in the Pony Club and participated in Gymkhana games and showing and jumping. And finally at 14, you decided that's it. The horses are the way I'm going to go. You just left and went off with the horses. Talk to me about that.
Well, my parents said that, at that time, of course, I was born in 1951, so kind of post-Second World War era. And, my parents obviously wanted the best for me and decided that, okay, they kind of gave up, like, if you want a career with horses, then at least get some qualifications.
Mm-hmm. And that's when you went to the British Horse Society for...
Yeah, I went to Allerton Equitation School, and I was on the course there for the British Horse Society Assistant Instructor's Exam, which was the only qualification in those days available. And I trained under the tutelage of Davina Whiteman, who I still credit for the foundation that I have. Of, even though I went through Pony Club and got the Pony Club exams, Davina was, I think, the catalyst for setting me off and setting my career in the way it did. We all have our mentors, and Davina was mine. And I was influenced by a lot of great horsemen of that time. And even as a child, I used to go around the local villages. There was great stable managers in those days, stud grooms, as we used to say, that really influenced me and taught me the old methods that you don't find today. And I think that was a marvelous sort of education for me. And then having a good foundation to my professional career, it set me up to do things properly, very thoroughly and very properly, because in those days when I was growing up, one man did 2 horses, or even just one horse, and, they might be a hunting horse, they may be, there wasn't the sport horse influence that there is today. So they learned how to do horses really properly, and thoroughly and spend all day with them and, learning to do it properly. And that I picked up, and then having very good influences from then on, and with some really great horsemen and women.
And so you spent a year taking that course, is that correct?
That's right. Yes, it was a year's course, and after that, I decided that I just wanted to jump. I just wanted to jump, and I got into it when I was at equitation school, and we competed quite a bit, and not eventing, it was show jumping, and we had a lot of indoor competitions.
But you've also done a lot of different disciplines. I mean, you've instructed in all the 3 major Olympic disciplines. Obviously, you've received instruction in all of those also, so that wasn't your only interest, jumping.
No, it soon evolved from there. I realized, that the basis to good jumping was the groundwork and the flat work, and then I did dabble in not only just the Olympic disciplines, but driving. I learned to drive, and I broke in a lot of ponies and horses for driving, polo, hunting, of course, which everybody does in England, and that taught you how to look after horses really properly. And racing, and I was influenced by some great racing people at the time, and so I dabbled in so many different things. I even did a bit of vaulting, did some endurance, a little bit of everything, and I think that was a great foundation. And I'd encourage anybody to do that today to get as much sort of rounded experience as possible.
You certainly have a lot of that.
And we're going to take a short break now to hear from one of our valued sponsors here on the Dressage Radio Show, and that is horseshow.com. At horseshow.com, you can now compete online, just like you were at a regular horse show. Get judged by the top judges and get the judges' comments. Just upload your home video and enter a class online at horseshow.com. It's a simple and economic way for you to compete with your horse from home. It's also a great way to prepare for your next show or track your progress during the off-season. Horseshow.com features real horse shows for multiple breeds and disciplines, and they're judged by nationally accredited judges. So upload, enter and win anytime at horseshow.com.
Chris, you've worked with a lot of the top riders around the world, really. Can you talk to me about some of those riders and what disciplines they were in and some of the names?
Well, yeah, I've been really lucky, Donna. I've actually worked with some great names in the Olympic disciplines. Primarily, I've worked with, Sheila Wilcox. I was with her with the Canadian Olympic team for eventing, and I started off, actually, my career with Peter Robeson, who was an Olympian in the Tokyo Olympics in show jumping, and that was my first employer. So that really gave me the bug to do jumping and to jump, and I learnt an enormous amount from him about the basics of jumping, and also worked with Caroline Bradley, who was also a well-known British show jumper who sadly passed away all too early, and got to ride some really great horses. She even put me on Franco one day, which was one of her best horses, and that's a steep learning curve when you get put on some of these best horses.
But it also really had that fire lit under you, I'm sure.
It did, and I also in Italy worked with Vittorio Orlandi, and I was blessed at that time to be working closely with the show jumpers and watch the Dinzeo brothers, Piero and Raimondo Dinzeo, who are going to be guests on the Equestrian Legends shortly. They're both, one's 89 and the other's 91, so that gives you a sense of
when you were coming up.
When I was coming up,
yeah,
and. I work with a lot of great people in Switzerland and Italy and in different countries. Some of really, really good names in the Olympic disciplines, and learnt an awful lot from them, from their different training methods, and also from their methods of management and getting horses fit.
Did you find that they had more in common or more differences?
There are some things that are in common, but depending on the country, there were a lot of differences, certainly, and not least of all because of the environment and the climate. When we were in Italy, I remember, we'd have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to work the horses. And okay, this is not racing; you're used to it, but in the eventing world, in order to ride the horses because it became too hot. By 9 o'clock, we would be finished by 9 o'clock, and in the summer because it was so hot. And in Switzerland, the other way round, it was so cold in the winters that we would wait until, it got as warm as it could do during the day in the winter to ride. And there was a lot of different cultural differences, yes. Yeah.
And I suppose the topography and the soil would change some of the ways that they trained horses differently.
That's right. The environment, the topography, the footing, and whether we could work indoors or out, depending on the year. Yeah, time of year.
That's a pretty impressive list of people you've worked with.
Yeah, there was a lot of really great people, and then I was able to work closely with Ginny Leng, or Ginny Holgate as she was, another eventer. Watched her when I was living in England. We were almost neighbours, and watch her training methods as well. And she was famous for, the incredible standard of fitness of her horses. And so I kind of picked from different people around the world, of their different methods of training, and worked with dressage masters in Austria, for example, in Switzerland, where Christine Stuckelberger in Switzerland, for example, she was a great Swiss rider in her day, and George Wahl was they trained with her or trained her. So I picked up a lot from the Austrians, from the Germans about dressage, and the Swiss, and with eventing from the Brits, from the Canadians, from the Italians, and the French. And so I've been very lucky in enjoying the different cultures while learning about the different training methods in each of those countries too, which I think is helping me doing what I'm doing now. Yeah,
absolutely. It makes you much more well-rounded than you otherwise would be, even if you had done this for years, but in one country.
Yeah. So it's been a great progress. It's been a great journey to have been able to enjoy not only their training methods and listening to these great horsemen and women and watch them, but also to take what you can adapt for your own purposes. And then when I was training my own horses, you'd pick a bit of this and a bit of that, and you'd make it into your own cornucopia and develop your own methods from it.
Chris, you are a fan, obviously, of many disciplines, many riders, many horses. It seems like first, in self-deprecating almost in that nature. But with your wealth of knowledge and background, it would seem that there's got to be times when you're watching some of these events and even some of the top-level riders and think, I wish that they would do this differently with this horse, or I think that might help that horse. Do you ever think that? Because I know you don't say it, and you never would.
What I think I wish most of all is that young people coming into the sport, no matter what discipline they're in, they would take time to learn horsemanship. They would take time to develop those basic skills and spend the barn time. And that, if there's anything that's missing in the younger population who maybe are coming from an urban situation and not off the farm as we did in the past, that they, even more than ever, and even more than then, they need to spend that barn time and not just have the horse handed to them and, given the gloves and the whip and a leg up, and then when they get off, they walk away from the horse.
And when you say barn time, what do you mean exactly, other than just brushing them? What do you mean by the barn time?
Just being with the horses and feeling their legs and feeling them at any time of day, observing horses, observing other people. There's so much you can do just by watching people. And
working with more than one or two
yes.
horses.
And working and being exposed to as many different horses as you can, all types of horses, and it may not just be your chosen discipline, but spend time. Like I hope the riders today that go to competitions where there are other disciplines, there is an opportunity to go and watch other disciplines, and see what happens. You can learn something from everybody.
So since we don't have a program like you do in England with the British Horse Society, just basically make sure that you're self-taught. Teach yourself if it's, I guess, there's plenty of places to look if you want to learn.
There really is. There's tons of places to look. If you really, really want to make this your profession, or just get the best out of it for yourself and for your horse, whatever you're doing with your horse, there's so many opportunities to learn by watching other people and being open to learning, to really take in what other people are doing. You don't need to have to adapt to everything that you see, but at least learn from it. There is something, I learnt that myself from watching people in so many different cultures around the world that there's something you can take away.
Try to at least sort out why they do what they do.
Why they do what they do, how they do what they do, and that there is a reason. I mean, you might not believe in the German system, or you might not believe in the Italian system, or whatever. You may not believe in it, but there's a reason why they do it, and there's a reason why the Brits are good at eventing. There's a reason why the French are good at show jumping. There's a reason why the Argentinians produce such good polo players. There's a reason why, Americans actually are pretty good at endurance and vaulting. There's a reason for that. And it comes to the culture and, the management and the education, the training, the opportunities. You put all those things together, and there's a lot that people can learn just by observing.
I think that's great advice. So in 1987, you were really forced to the ground with back injuries, and that kind of took you into your work in the media world and print photography, and then into broadcasting. You traveled the world in photojournalism, and in fact lived in 7 different countries, and moved to the United States in 1999. So having lived in all those different countries and had so many different experiences, what brought you to the United States, and why did you stay? Why are you still here?
Well, I think I had the benefit of living in a lot of different countries and seen a lot of different cultures. And I think when I first came here, I thought, this has the space and which a lot of countries didn't have. I mean, I lived in Australia a while, that has space. But the European countries don't have the kind of space we have here. And that kind of appealed to my soul, to have that kind of room for growth, and it wasn't crowded. England has just become so crowded now. It's a tiny island after all. So it appealed to me on many levels, and I think the opportunity for growth and certainly in my career.
When you first came to the United States, which state did you settle?
Right here in Kentucky.
Right here in Kentucky and stayed here? Good choice.
I had a little deviation. I went over to California for a couple of years to work in television. But,
well, currently you have many roles in equestrian media. Equestrian media consultant, author, journalist, producer, director, broadcaster, and you're an artist and a photographer. You've kind of dabbled in ceramics. I think the obvious question is, do you have a short attention span? Or are you really this passionate about this many things?
I never thought of it that way. Yeah, you could say that. Well, I suppose you have to put it in context of a life, Donna. It's what's evolved over time, and there has been a time and a place for all those activities, really.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And I think you've been good about letting, when one door starts to close, you're really good about seeing the opportunity for another door to open.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Yeah.
I'm not always going to blame it on your short attention span. But obviously you don't have too short of an attention span because you published 3 books, which it takes a lot of effort to even write 3 of them. The names of your books: Practical Stable Management, Horse Care and Management, and Fit to Compete. We talked a lot about the British Horse Society and the way they have it set up in England. We don't have anything like that here in the United States. Did you just see a need for people to get that foundation and write these books based on what was your impetus?
Well, the catalyst for that actually was I'd started doing a little bit of journalism back in the mid-'70s, and a friend of mine who's an established author, Caroline Burt, Caroline Ackroyd was her pen name, she encouraged me to start writing. And I said, Caroline, I couldn't write a book. I wouldn't know where to start. And anyway, she helped me. She was my mentor, and she said, Chris, you've got, the knowledge, and I can, put you in touch with a publisher or two and, tell you how to write a synopsis. And so we did that, and we took it to a publisher, and they said, yes, please. And it went from there, really. And before I finished the first one, they asked for the second one. And it was always non-fiction at that time, because that was the experience that I could bring to the printed page. But, I think it just went from there, because I got into journalism and they wrote the books, and kind of done that and moved on to more areas of print journalism and photography. And yeah.
Well, you're also an artist. I've seen a lot of your paintings. You can go to your website and see your paintings. I've seen a lot of your photos. The thing that surprised me is that there's no horses. I mean, there's a lot of landscapes. There's photos of Tibet. I mean, you've obviously traveled, and there's kangaroos, lions. No horses. You don't paint horses. You don't photograph horses. Is your art sort of like your escape from the horses? Not that you need an escape, but just something else.
Donna, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be able to draw my pony, and I never could. And I would always make him look like an elephant or a giraffe or something other than a horse. And I found out later when I got interested in art, which is very recent, actually, the interest in doing it myself, not being an observer, but actually dabbling in it as I do, that it was using the wrong side of my brain. I had, this idea in my mind of what the horse should look like, in terms of, their conformation, what was correct. And that was what I was trying to apply to art, and it didn't work. So if I turned a picture of a horse upside down and then copied it, it would come out looking really like a horse. So I was clearly using the wrong side of my brain, and I've probably been doing that all my life and on all kinds of things.
So you just decided not to draw the horses. You had too much of an idea already of how you wanted them to look, or how you thought they should look.
Yeah, and I think, when I did a lot of photography, the photography started actually for my books, and then I got into travel photography. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a lot of competition, a lot of sport horse photography. And I got into travel photography when I started traveling around the world, and that, I think, inspired me, and opened up my mind to sort of landscapes and other things. Yeah.
Right now you have 4 radio shows. I don't know how you have the time to do this, but you've got the eventing radio show, the dressage radio show, the jumping radio show, and you've just launched your new bi-weekly radio show, the Equestrian Legends. I'm really curious, how do you keep abreast of all these different disciplines? I mean, you're very up to date. I've listened to your shows. The questions that you ask the individuals are relevant and up to date. And so not only do you have all these different disciplines, you have hundreds of individual people and horses. How do you keep up to date on everything, on everybody?
Well, thanks to the internet, I suppose. I just feed off this every waking hour. I love it. It's always been a passion, and you'll talk to any horseman or woman, you know this yourself, and it's easy to talk about horses.
Mm-hmm. And so you just read everything and keep up with it, and there you are.
And we're going to take another short break now to remind you of another valued sponsor of the Horse Radio Network's Dressage Radio Show, and that is Kentucky Performance Products. KPP offers a variety of great supplements, and one of those is Caraform, which is a source of biotin, methionine, iodine, and zinc supplementation for all classes of horses. Biotin, methionine, iodine, and zinc are included at levels shown to support the maintenance of healthy hooves and hair. These ingredients are combined with lecithin and full-fat soybeans to provide a source of essential fatty acids, an ingredient that supports a normal, healthy hair coat. Yeast cultures are included and play a role in the maintenance of normal digestive function, making Caraform a well-rounded, affordable supplement. To find out more about this and all of the KPP products, visit kppusa.com or call 1-800-772-1988. 1988. And to learn more about horse nutrition and interact with the KPP experts, be sure to join their Facebook fan page.
So let's talk about your Equestrian Legends. You've already had 2 guests, Bill Steincross from Show Jumping and Jack Burton from Eventing. But what was the impetus behind the program, and what's your ideal vision for it?
Well, it started off as a series called Inspirational People that was nested within the jumping, dressage, and eventing shows, depending on the guest's discipline. And it was aimed at people, the guests were, I should say, the older generation. And it soon became apparent that we had a little gem here, that these were recordings that would probably be one of the last recordings that these guests would do if they were particularly older. And they had stepped away from the microphone or from the public eye a long time ago. And we realized that it certainly merited its own show. And it's a very, very interesting show to do. I'm really enjoying that because, not that I'm as old as some of my guests, I'm sorry, with all due respect, but there are periods of their career that I can relate to, having watched them as competitors. So I can have that conversation with them because I was watching them as I was growing up.
Yeah, they're the shoulders upon which everybody else is standing now. And so these are people that you looked up to when you were young, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely. definitely.
So in 2005, you established the Chris E. Stafford Groom of the Year Award for the U.S. Eventing Association. Surprisingly, there wasn't an award like that, and I think that it's wonderful that you've done it. But I guess, what made you decide, I'm going to do this? Nobody's done it. I'm going to do it.
Well, when I was in England, back in the 80s, I think it was, I started an organization, quote, to foster and protect the interests of those who work with horses. Because I found, and especially coming up, having groomed myself for years since I left school, that there was exploitation of people that work with horses. And I felt passionately about them having the recognition that they deserve. And it came about that I started this organization. I called it the National Association of Grooms, NAG for short. And from there, I tried to educate not only the people coming into the horse industry to have a career this was a respectable profession, but also to educate the employers that would exploit people because they didn't know what standard that these young people had coming in, what experience level when they came into the industry. And to cut a long story short, I got very involved with training and education of these young people, and was really passionate about of them being given the recognition that they deserve in the industry. And because we all love horses, and there's no reason why we should be exploited for the love of the horse, for what we bring to any stable, whether it be dressage, jumping, racing, no matter where it is. And from there, I got involved in England, as I said, with the training and education and establishing the Grooms Award over there in England. So when I came here, one of the things that was clearly missing was that structure of training and qualification structure here. But I felt that the grooms should be recognised. And so this was my small token to... it started with eventing. I've offered it recently to the Dressage Federation, but they've declined. So, I'd like to think that other people will pick it up and to recognise the groom. And the eventing groom, as you know, from doing Rolex, is one of the most hard-working set of individuals for any profession in the horse industry.
Yeah, and I think to be good at what you do, you have to have some pride. And if there's too much exploitation and very little recognition, it's hard to take pride in your work. And if you don't take pride in your work, then ultimately the horse suffers. So I think it's great for everybody. I'm glad you're doing that. Hopefully other people will.
Hopefully other people will follow, because it does recognise them each year, and I think they enjoy that recognition. And it encourages young people coming into the sport too, that they will get that recognition.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit to your formidable years. Your maternal great-grandfather used to work with stallions, and in fact, he would take the mares around the country by train. And you've told me that you have fond memories of time spent with him as a child. Can you talk about what that meant to you and what you learned from him?
Well, he was the only member of the family that had any horse connection. And my mother used to take me every Sunday to go and visit her grandparents. And he would have me sit on his knee because I was very small, and he would tell me horse stories, all kinds of horse stories, and how he used to take these horses, the stallion, around, travelling by train around England. And so that meant, leading a horse for many miles on foot. And he did this for the Althorpe estate in Northamptonshire, which, of course, is the home of Princess Diana.
So this made you probably nostalgic for travel and horses.
Yeah, maybe he sowed the seed right there.
Exactly. All right, well, while we've delved into your personal life, we might as well keep going here.
But first, it's time for another short break to remind you of Equestrian Collections, another valued sponsor here on the Dressage Radio Show. And if you're shopping for a young rider, Equestrian Collections gives you the best choice of riding apparel and equestrian footwear, equestrian-themed gifts, riding helmets and riding safety gear for young riders of any equestrian website in the world. great everyday and promotional prices too, with an enormous selection, including kids' riding clothes, boots, equestrian thermal gear, riding gloves, equestrian jewellery, and fun coordinating equestrian motif belts, boot and paddock socks, and riding tops. So from head to toe, they have young riders covered. You can shop the Young Riders department or go to the horse department at equestriancollections.com.
I have to admit, your story, from what I've heard of it, sounds a lot like my own mother's. My mom's life was driven by a passion for the horses, and I think she had more of a passion for the horses than she did to please what her family's expectations might have been of her. My mother was one of the first women jockeys in America. They wanted her to be a telephone operator. It sounds like your story is somewhat similar, like maybe your aspirations or their aspirations for you were a little different than your passion. Is that correct?
Well, I think by the time I was ready to leave home, to be honest, they'd kind of said, oh, okay. You know, they could see that I had no sense of direction to go anywhere but with horses. I was smitten at the age I was 14. I was totally smitten. And, I'd get out of all kinds of things, like washing the dishes. Oh, I got to go down and see my pony. They'd gotten so used to it that they realized that, I just lived and breathed them like any teenage girl, that loves horses will recognize that,
And speaking of being smitten, you also were married while you were in England, which I was surprised to learn. And as you said, a lifetime ago. Was this something that, literally you just fall in love, you got married, it didn't work because obviously you're single and in the United States now? Or was it, certainly turning 60, there's a cultural sense of obligation at times that you feel like, well, this is what I have to do, You get to a certain age, you get married. Anyway, talk to me about that.
Well, there's your answer. You've answered it right there.
So that's what happened. It was a cultural thing, and here you are in the United States single. So, not surprising to learn that, given your deep well of experience in the equestrian world and in the media world, that you also act as a consultant, but like in a number of different ways. In addition to career counseling for people who are already in the equestrian industries, you offer media and public relations services, advising for individuals, companies, and organization events. You assist businesses in development and marketing. You offer assistance in writing for print, whether it be website, broadcast, medias, columns, promotional copy. Produce and direct video productions of events and projects from script to screen. And you do live commentating, announcing, emceeing, broadcast, voiceovers, and audiobook recordings, and served as the adjunct professor of equine studies at Midway College. Where do you find the time? Obviously, you have the passion, you have the depth of knowledge, you're the perfect person for all of this. Where do you find the time?
Well, I don't do all of it at the same time.
So that's what it is. It's time management.
Time management, and it is time management. And right now, with all the radio shows, that takes up most of my time. And then I have clients too, for media, for other media work like you. Well,
I hate to ask you if you have a favorite among those, but I mean, there has to be something that drives you just a little bit more. Is there one thing that stands out to you that you like to do the most?
I think I get a great kick out of switching on the microphone and letting other people tell their story in the horse world. That is a real sense of joy to me, because everybody in the horse world or in life has their own story. And I think the biggest challenge, as you know, as a broadcaster, is enabling people to feel comfortable in the environment when you turn on a microphone to them to tell their story. And that, I think, is probably what I enjoy as much as anything. And for them at the end of that, when we turn off the recorder, to say how much they've enjoyed it, and some have been very kind in their comments, and I think, well, okay, well, I've done my job.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these other things that you do, the consulting, the career counseling, website development, are just different ways to let people tell their story too, rather than on the radio. Yes,
it really is, and letting people be the best they can be. And when you think about it, it's all evolved around the horse. And that's my biggest sense of joy, even though I can't compete and train horses competitively anymore because of injuries. I've always been blessed by being working in the horse industry and being surrounded by horses and talking about horses and talking to horse people. So, you often hear that cliche, about people having the best job in the world for them. Mm-hmm. And I think I've always been lucky in being in the right time and place to advance my career. And it's always been around the horse.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've also made your own luck. It's one thing to say, I've been lucky, but you've put yourself in the right position. Do you feel like there are any stones that you have left unturned right now that you would like to explore?
That's a very good question. I wasn't prepared for that one. Not that I was prepared for any of these notes, Donovan. No, I think to continue to be truly a good professional and for people to say, yeah, that guest was interesting, and that I facilitated that guest being interesting and able to tell their story on radio or TV. And as you know, you and I have worked side by side at some of the major competitions, and that's fun too, being the producer behind the camera, or stepping in front of the camera to host.
Yeah, you like that because you get to say, go get them. You go over there and talk to them right now. Don't worry that you're interrupting. They'll be fine. Yeah, I like the way you producers do that. So, what are you looking forward to coming up next? What's your next sport that you're looking forward to?
Next sport?
Not next sport, but next show or event.
Next show.
Yeah.
Just coming up very shortly is the North America Junior Young Rider Championships, mm-hmm. and that's fun to see all these young riders, juniors and young riders, compete in the FEI disciplines, and to be their best they can be, because that is often the catalyst, that competition, for them launching onto their senior career. And I've talked to a lot of people on the shows that have been through that program, and that's fun. I enjoy going over there and watching them and listening to their aspirations, their ambitions, and so many of them have really, really good horses, and they can only be in that young rider program till they're 21. And for them, it's like, okay, now what? I've still got a good horse, and what am I going to do with my career? And some of them, want to go on to be, the Debbie McDonald or the Karen O'Connor of this world, and they're inspired by that because a lot of those riders went through this program too. And so I enjoy going and covering that event, and we'll cover it on all of the shows, the dressage, jumping, and eventing shows. So
I have to ask you, do you have any regrets it seems like you, again, have left no stone unturned, but do you have any regrets?
I don't know if there were any regrets. I'm sorry that I had to retire as early as I did. Because of injury, but I knew, I had to physically, but I hope that I've managed to steer my career to the best of my ability and to use the experience and the talent, whatever that may be, that I have, and bring all that together. And I think that's what I enjoy about doing these radio shows now, to be honest, Donna, is that I can kind of get my arms around everything that I've experienced and bring that to the audiences, and I hope sound somewhat intelligent about what I'm talking about. And
you do that. So you have the show with legends, and you're not legend status yet because you're not old enough. But let's say that 20 years down the road, you're legend status. How would you like to be remembered? What would you like for your legacy to be?
That I was always passionate about horses and passionate about what I did, and that, I probably that, she did okay. She did okay, and she enjoyed what she was doing, and that brought the horse world, and certainly through radio, through broadcast, through TV, whatever it may be, brought that to a wider audience as well. I'd love to think that we've done that, and because we often get comments here at the Horse Radio Network how people listen to the different shows and they think, wow, we finally have a voice, and I think I'd like to be remembered for being part of that, but giving people a voice, not just here on the network but anywhere that I've been, giving them the opportunity to talk about their passion for horses in the way that I've enjoyed my passion with horses, yeah.
Having covered many disciplines myself, I can say that it's always you have to go to the Dressage website or the eventing website, and having the Horse Radio Network, it's nice to have all those things together now, and you can, and you're obviously well-rounded in all the different disciplines. But so with all of that said, obviously your background with the horses and in media, I think the last thing is that people need to know how to get a hold of you now that they know about your background, and if they wanted any kind of consulting or advice, or is the best place just to go to your website at chrisstafford.com?
They can go to chrisestafford.com, or they can just email me, chris@chrisestafford.com.
And don't forget the E between the Chris and the Stafford.
That's right. That's the royal E, Elizabeth. And yeah, or they can email me here, chris@horseradionetwork.com. They hear it every week.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you for being my guest on the show this week, and you have a wonderful birthday.
Well, thank you very much, Donna. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you.
Thank you.